Your attitude doesn't align with our company culture, Colin Draper stated, his voice devoid of emotion through my laptop speakers. We're terminating your employment effective immediately. I stared at the screen, trying to comprehend the situation. Just the day before, I had presented a detailed plan to enhance our project management system, a proposal that promised to boost efficiency and transparency throughout the organization. Colin, I don't get it. My proposal was aimed at improving workflow, I protested. The decision is final, Tanya, he replied, averting his eyes from the camera. Human Resources will send you the necessary paperwork. Please return any company property by the end of the week. Before I could say anything else, he ended the meeting, leaving my screen blank. I sat in shock in my home office in Fort Lauderdale. 7 years of unwavering dedication to Vertex Solutions. Countless late nights ensuring projects were delivered on schedule, and this was the abrupt conclusion. A brief Zoom call and a digital door slammed shut. My name is Tanya Whitmore. At 40, I had established myself as an operations analyst known for getting things done. I had rescued failing projects, mended client relationships damaged by upper management's errors, and consistently improved our efficiency metrics year after year. Clients appreciated me for my straightforwardness and ability to deliver results. What Colin didn't mention, what he carefully skirted around, was that my proposed system would have exposed how he and other executives were mismanaging resources. The new tracking tools would have made it uncomfortably clear how budgets were being inflated and timelines manipulated to hide poor planning at the top. I glanced at my notebook, where I had noted the key points of my presentation. Nearby, my phone buzzed with messages from concerned colleagues who had heard the news. I ignored it. Instead, I opened my laptop and started a new document. At the top, I typed Whitmore Consulting Group Business Plan. A strange calm settled over me. I had expected to feel anger or despair, but instead I felt clarity. I had spent years building relationships with our clients, understanding their needs, and delivering solutions that truly worked. Those connections and that knowledge weren't Vertex Solutions. They were mine. As the reality of my situation sank in, I realized this wasn't an ending. It was an opportunity to finally create something that reflected my values: transparency, efficiency, and genuine client service. The phone continued to buzz, but I ignored it. I had planning to do. I had always been the problem solver, the fixer. When I joined Vertex Solutions 7 years ago, they were a struggling project management firm, barely staying afloat in a competitive market. Their processes were outdated, their client communication inconsistent, and their reputation was suffering. In my first year, I completely restructured their workflow systems, introduced regular client check-ins, and developed custom solutions for their 3 largest accounts. Colin, who had just been promoted to Chief Operations Officer back then, took credit for most of my innovations during executive meetings. But I didn't mind. I believed in the work, not the recognition. You're invaluable, Tanya, he would say after I salvaged another mismanaged project. The clients trust you. It was true. While Colin and the other executives wined and dined potential clients with grand promises, I was the one building relationships based on actually delivering on those promises. I spent hours understanding each client's unique challenges, often creating customized solutions that surpassed our standard offerings. James Henderson from Texac Corp once told me, "I don't care who's officially in charge. We know you're the one making things happen." Similar sentiments were echoed by Diane Powell at North Peak Engineering and Robert Johnson at Borealis Capital. They all knew who to call for straight answers and real solutions. My husband Tyler had been telling me for years that I was undervalued at Vertex. "You're carrying that company on your shoulders," he would say as I worked late nights fixing problems I hadn't created. "One day, you should strike out on your own." I always dismissed the idea. I had job security, a decent salary, and I was making a difference, even if it wasn't always recognized. Starting over felt daunting and risky. What Tyler couldn't see, and what I was only beginning to realize myself, was how the company culture had been gradually deteriorating. The focus had shifted from client satisfaction to executive bonuses. Projects were being understaffed while budgets mysteriously increased. Resources were allocated based on which managers were in favor that week, not on which projects actually needed them. My envisioned system would have brought transparency to everything. It would have generated automatic reports detailing resource distribution, budgetary use, and time management across all projects. The dashboard would have made it impossible to conceal the inefficiencies that I had been quietly rectifying over the years. In hindsight, I should have anticipated Colin's response. My proposal wasn't merely an enhancement. It was a threat to the status quo that served him and his close associates. The morning after my dismissal, I woke up feeling oddly unburdened. Tyler brought me coffee in bed, his expression a mix of concern and anger on my behalf. "I still can't believe they let you go via a video call," he said, sitting on the bed's edge. "After everything you've done for them." I sipped my coffee and reached for my laptop. The ironic part is, I'm not even upset anymore. I'm relieved. Relieved. I've been compensating for their poor management for years, covering their errors, navigating their egos. I'm worn out, Tyler. He examined my face. "So what are you going to do?" I turned my laptop toward him, revealing the business plan I had been up half the night preparing. "I'm going to start my own consulting firm, do what I've always done, but on my terms." Tyler glanced over the document, his expression shifting from surprise to enthusiasm. "You're serious about this?" "Absolutely serious," I nodded. "I've already secured the domain name and started outlining service packages." I spent the remainder of the morning sending emails and making phone calls. Not to disparage Vertex or Colin, I was too professional for that, but to inform my contacts about my career shift. I chose my words carefully, simply stating that I was embarking on a new venture focused on operational efficiency and project management consulting. By lunchtime, my inbox was filling with responses. Former colleagues expressing shock at my departure, industry contacts offering connections, and most surprisingly, an email from James Henderson at Trixacorp. "Heard about your departure from Vertex. Let's talk ASAP." I called him immediately. "Tanya," he said upon answering, "what on earth happened?" I provided him with the sanitized version, a difference in vision for the company's future. James wasn't convinced. "Colin finally realized you were the glue holding everything together, didn't he? Got threatened?" "I couldn't say," I replied diplomatically. "Well, his loss," James continued. "Listen, we have 3 major projects lined up with Vertex for the next quarter, but honestly, you were the only reason we stayed with them. If you're going independent, we'd prefer to work directly with you." I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. "That's a significant offer, James. It's a no-brainer for us. Your strategic approach has saved us countless hours and resources. Send me a proposal by the end of the week." After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. Then my phone rang again. It was Diane Powell from North Peak Engineering with essentially the same message. By the end of the day, Robert Johnson from Borealis Capital had also called. 3 of Vertex's largest clients, representing nearly 40% of their quarterly revenue, were ready to follow me out the door. That night, as I updated my business plan with this unexpected development, I realized that what Colin had intended as punishment had instead become my liberation. 1 week after my termination, Whitmore Consulting Group was officially launched. I had converted our guest bedroom into a proper office, complete with a professional setup for video calls. Tyler had surprised me with a custom nameplate for my desk, Tanya Whitmore, founder and CEO. I was in the middle of finalizing my proposal for Trixacorp. When my phone rang, the caller ID showing it was Jessica Barnes, Vertex's HR director. "Tanya," she said when I answered, her voice unusually tentative. "How are you?" "I'm doing well, Jessica. What can I do for you?" "Well, Colin asked me to reach out. There seems to be some confusion with a few of our clients. They're requesting to terminate their contracts." I leaned back in my chair. "And you're calling me because they've specifically mentioned your name. Colin thought perhaps you might have influenced their decision." I chose my words carefully. "I've started my own consulting firm, which I'm legally entitled to do. I haven't violated any non-compete clauses as Vertex doesn't have them. If clients are making business decisions, that's their prerogative." There was a pause on the line. "Would you consider coming back? Colin is prepared to offer you a significant raise and a new title." The offer caught me by surprise, but it only took a moment to find my answer. "I appreciate the offer, Jessica, but I've already committed to a new path." After ending the call, I received an email from Trixa confirming that they had officially ended their contract with Vertex Solutions and were eager to collaborate with Whitmore Consulting Group. Attached was the proposal I had initially sent them, approved without any changes. Within hours, similar emails flooded in from North Peak Engineering in Borealis Capital. Just like that, I secured 3 major clients, filling my schedule for the upcoming quarter. The next day, David Chen, a senior project manager at Vertex whom I had worked with closely for many years, reached out. "Need to talk. Can I call you?" he messaged. I agreed, and when he called, his tone was hushed. "Things are chaotic here," he confided. After those clients pulled out, Colin called an emergency meeting, blaming everyone but himself. I offered my condolences, genuinely concerned for my former colleagues. "Don't be sorry," he replied. "You should see the execs' faces now. They finally understand who was keeping our clients satisfied." David paused before continuing. "Several of us are considering leaving. Would you be interested in hiring experienced team members? While I hadn't planned on expanding so soon, a trusted team would enable me to take on new clients faster. Send me their resumes," I instructed him. By the end of the second week, Whitmore Consulting Group had expanded, incorporating David and 2 other former Vert.x employees, Anna Martinez, a talented data analyst, and Patrick Wilson, an adept client relations manager. We set up our office in a small professional space I leased in downtown Fort Lauderdale. It was a financial stretch, but I understood the necessity of projecting a credible business image to potential clients. What I hadn't anticipated was how quickly word would spread within our industry. My phone was constantly buzzing with inquiries from potential clients who had heard about the new firm launched by that miracle worker from Vertex. Meanwhile, industry contacts informed me that Colin was struggling to prevent further client losses. He had finally started implementing some of the changes I had suggested. Too little, too late. 3 months into running Whitmore Consulting Group, we had already outgrown our modest office. With a client list expanding weekly and a team now including 7 former Vertex employees, I began looking for larger office spaces and considering our long-term growth strategy. One evening, as I was wrapping up, David entered my office with an odd expression. "You're going to want to see this," he said, placing his tablet on my desk. The screen displayed an industry newsletter with the headline, "Vertex Solutions Announces Restructuring Amid Client Exodus." The article detailed how the company had lost over 50% of its client base in just 12 weeks and was now laying off nearly a third of its staff. "Colin's been demoted," David added. The board finally intervened. I skimmed through the article, feeling a mix of emotions. I hadn't aimed to harm Vertex. I had simply built something better. "There's more," David said, retrieving the tablet and navigating to another page. "Look who's reaching out." It was a LinkedIn message from Edward Novak, Vert.x's CEO. "Tanya, I think we need to talk. The board has questions about the systems you developed, and frankly, we could use your insights. Would you be open to consultancy?" I looked at David, who was now grinning. "They want to hire you to fix the mess they created when they let you go." The irony wasn't lost on me. "Let me think about it," I told David. That night over dinner, I discussed the situation with Tyler. "You don't owe them anything," he reminded me, "but helping them could be good for business and show everyone you're the bigger person." I nodded, weighing my options. It would also allow me to implement the transparency I always advocated for. The next day I replied to Edward's message, agreeing to meet, but clarifying that I would attend as a consultant, not as a potential employee. The meeting was scheduled for the following week at Vertex headquarters. Upon arrival, the atmosphere was notably different. The reception area was quieter, with fewer employees bustling about. Edward greeted me personally, looking worn and humbled. "Thank you for coming, Tanya," he said, guiding me to the conference room. "I appreciate your willingness to talk." Inside, I was surprised to see not only Edward, but also 3 board members. Colin was notably absent. Before we begin, Edward started once we were seated. "I want to apologize for how your departure was handled. It was unprofessional and, as we've now realized, incredibly short-sighted." One of the board members, an older woman I recognized as Victoria Winters, spoke up. "We reviewed your proposal for system enhancements that you submitted before your departure. It's precisely what our company requires and, honestly, should have adopted long ago. We're interested in hiring Whitmore Consulting Group to implement these systems," Edward explained. "We are ready to propose a highly competitive contract." I listened attentively, posing detailed questions about their expectations and timeline. It was a major project, demanding substantial resources from my expanding firm. As our meeting wrapped up, Victoria escorted me to the elevator. "Off the record," she whispered, "Colin's decision to terminate you might have been the most costly error in this company's history. Some board members are still trying to comprehend how it happened." I smiled politely. Sometimes it takes a shakeup to recognize what's truly important. As the elevator doors shut, I felt a wave of vindication. Not because Vertex was struggling, but because my value was finally acknowledged, not just by them, but by the entire industry. The contract with Vertex marked only the beginning. As word spread that Whitmore Consulting Group was collaborating with the very company that had once dismissed its founder, our reputation in the industry surged. Companies were intrigued by a consultancy capable of delivering such value that even a former employer would swallow their pride to partner with them. 6 months after launching my business, we relocated to a spacious office in a prestigious downtown Fort Lauderdale building. Our team expanded to 15 employees, most of whom I had personally selected for their outstanding skills and client-focused attitudes. On the day we signed our 10th major client, I organized a small celebration at the office. As we raised glasses of champagne to toast our success, my assistant notified me that someone was waiting to see me in reception. To my surprise, it was Colin Draper. "Do you have a moment?" he asked, appearing uneasy in our sleek reception area. I led him to my office, intrigued by his unexpected visit. "Congratulations on your success," he began awkwardly, gesturing around the office. "You've built something remarkable here." "Thank you," I replied neutrally. "What can I do for you, Colin?" He shifted in his seat. "I'm not here representing Vertex. I was let go last month." I didn't respond, waiting for more. "The transparency systems you implemented uncovered some issues in my management decisions." He cleared his throat. The board wasn't happy. I couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The very system he dismissed me for proposing had exposed his mismanagement. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, though we both knew I wasn't. "Look, Tanya," he said, leaning forward, "I know I erred with you. I was looking out for myself instead of doing what's right for the company. But I'm skilled at what I do when guided well." He took a deep breath. "I'm here to see if you might have a position open." The request was so unexpected that I hesitated for a moment. Colin Draper, the man who terminated me via Zoom without warning, was now seeking a job. I studied him closely. Was this genuine humility or another self-serving tactic? "Colin," I said finally, "my company is founded on transparency, collaboration, and authentic client service. Those aren't just buzzwords here. They're our daily practice." He nodded eagerly. "That's precisely why I want to work with you. I've learned from my mistakes." I considered his request. Employing Colin could be perceived as an incredible act of forgiveness or a risky decision to bring in someone who had already shown his true colors. "I don't have a position for you," I said at last, observing his disappointment, "but I can connect you with some industry contacts on one condition." "What's that?" "That you acknowledge what truly occurred between us. I wasn't fired because I didn't fit the culture. I was let go because I challenged a system benefiting you at the cost of clients and colleagues." Colin had the decency to look embarrassed. "You're right, and I've paid for that mistake." As I escorted him out, I realized my company's success wasn't just in clients and revenue. It was also reflected in this moment, having the confidence and security to confront a former adversary without bitterness. Later that afternoon, I made those calls as promised. Not because Colin deserved my help, but because it was the kind of leader I aspired to be, one who values growth and second chances, even for those who hadn't extended the same to me. A year after being fired via Zoom, I stood at the podium as the keynote speaker at the annual Project Management Excellence Conference in Miami. The irony was not lost on me. The previous year, Colin had represented Vert.x Solutions at this same event. Success isn't solely about having the right strategies, I explained to the audience of industry experts. It's about executing those strategies with integrity and openness. As I spoke, I noticed the executives from Vert.x Solutions seated in the front row. Edward Novak nodded in agreement, while Victoria Winters diligently took notes. Their company had stabilized under new management, but they hadn't yet reclaimed their previous market standing. When I established Whitmore Consulting Group, I continued, It wasn't about competing with former employers or proving anyone wrong. It was about creating an environment where quality work was done honestly, clients got the value they deserved, and employees were acknowledged for their efforts. After my talk during the networking session, Edward approached me with a glass of sparkling water. "That was an excellent presentation, Tanya," he remarked, though I sensed it was partly aimed at us. I smiled. "Interpret it as you wish, Edward." He looked around at the crowd, many of whom surrounded my Whitmore Consulting colleagues. "Your company has captured the industry's imagination. Everyone is curious about your secret." "There is no secret," I replied. "Just diligent work, authentic relationships, and clear processes. Everything I tried to implement at Vertex." Edward's expression turned thoughtful. "The board is considering a potential acquisition offer. Vertex is still struggling to regain its client base, and your systems have only exposed the structural issues we've overlooked for years." I raised an eyebrow, surprised by his honesty. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Would Whitmore Consulting Group consider acquiring Vertex Solutions? It might be an unconventional move, but it could benefit both companies." The acquisition of Vertex Solutions by Whitmore Consulting Group made headlines across the industry. What started as my personal story of vindication evolved into a business success narrative that would be studied in management courses. We retained most of Vertex's remaining staff, integrating them into our more transparent culture. Some adapted quickly to the change, while others struggled with the accountability our systems required. Colin, who had secured a role with a smaller firm thanks to my recommendation, sent me a congratulatory email saying, "You've built something extraordinary from adversity. I'm learning from your example." On the day we finalized the acquisition, I invited the original team members who had joined me in the early days to a private dinner. "I never imagined we'd end up here," David said, raising his glass. "From that tiny office to owning the company that let us go," Anna laughed. "I remember when we were piecing together equipment and working absurd hours. Now look at us." I gazed around the table at the people who had believed in my vision when it was just a bold response to being dismissed. "I couldn't have achieved any of this without all of you believing in what we could build together." Patrick, who had recently been promoted to head our client relations department, chimed in. "You know what the best part is? We didn't have to compromise who we are to get here. We succeeded by being better, not by being ruthless." As we celebrated, I reflected on our journey. When Colin had abruptly ended that Zoom call, denying me the dignity of a proper conversation, he thought he was demonstrating his power. Instead, he had unintentionally propelled me to create something far more significant than I would have otherwise built. Sometimes the greatest opportunities come disguised as unfair dismissals. Whitmore Consulting Group continued to expand, eventually opening offices in 3 additional cities. My leadership style, which emphasized empowering employees and nurturing genuine client relationships, became a case study in effective management. I often reflected on how being fired during that brief Zoom call turned out to be the best career development of my life, transforming adversity into triumph through professionalism rather than petty revenge.